Welcome to another Just Traveling Through video. I'm Celeste.
And I'm Terry.
And today we are just traveling through Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico.
A really fascinating place to visit.
So where is Carlsbad Caverns?
It is very close to the southern border of New Mexico and Texas, actually slightly northeast of where El Paso is located.
Now if you're getting there from Albuquerque, it's about 303 miles or 4.5 hours. And if you decide to visit White Sands National Park first, it's about 224 miles from Albuquerque to White Sands and then another 162 miles to Carlsbad.
Yeah, well, we were in the White Sands area and we drove over, which we'll talk about more later, but it's a really nice drive.
The park is 20 miles south of the city of Carlsbad.
Right off the highway, very hard to miss because there's nothing else out there.
So Carlsbad is the main city.
Right?
There's tons of hotels there.
Yeah, it's a fairly wide choice.
We do have some recommendations on our website. Any loyalty program that you're involved with, there's probably a hotel there associated with that loyalty program.
Yeah, there's enough visitation of the park to make these big hotel chains love to have a building there.
When we drove into the park, everything was very flat, and I was very surprised to think about there being caverns underneath the ground that we were standing on. But it's really at the edge of what is the Guadalupe Mountains, right?
Yeah, exactly. When you're in the visitor center parking lot and you look south, all you see is flat land going off in the distance towards New Mexico. If you look north, you're looking into the Guadalupe Mountains, and it gives you the beginning hint of what actually formed Carlsbad Caverns. Yeah, here you can get a great idea of the geographic history of this area. This whole area 250 million years ago was a coastline of an inland sea. The warm shallow sea created a 400-mile long horseshoe-shaped reef made of algae, sponges, seashells, and calcite. The reef was buried by salts and gypsum when the sea evaporated, but tectonic movement later uplifted it above ground. Over time, water eroded the Guadalupe Mountains into their current shape.
Just a quick note, here on the map you see it says Broke-Off Mountains, and the Broke-Off Mountain Range is located within the Guadalupe Mountain National Park and is indeed part of the Guadalupe Mountain Range. After the uplift exposed the limestone to the surface that Terry mentioned earlier, the primary process that shaped the caves was the action of slightly acidic water, rainwater, which picks up carbon dioxide from the air and soil, becomes slightly acidic as it seeps through the ground. This acidic water percolated through the limestone, dissolving it and gradually enlarging the cavities. Terry, when was Carlsbad discovered?
It was discovered in the late 19th century by a local rancher named Jim White. His exploration revealed the cavern's stunning formations, including the famous Big Room, which is one of the largest underground chambers in North America. In fact, the initial thinking was that Indians were not aware of it, but later they discovered a history of indigenous visitation by petroglyphs being carved into the stone around the natural cave entrance.
How many visitors does Carlsbad get every year?
Well, it's a little bit off the beaten path, being that far south in New Mexico. It gets approximately 500,000 visitors a year.
Carlsbad Caverns National Park is very large, covering a surface area of over 46,000 acres, or 73 square miles.
The cavern's Big Room at 8.2 acres is the largest chamber in North America and the 32nd largest in the world.
The total length of the rooms and the passages is still unknown, but the explored part of the main cavern is more than 30 miles long, which is crazy. It was crazy down there.
Yeah, only the first 3 miles are open to visitors, but cave exploration goes on all the time, and they're still looking to see how large Carlsbad actually is.
When doing research for this, I think our only gauge for other caves that we've been to a few in Europe, but we'd been to Luray Caverns in Virginia, and it's much smaller than this. So I started looking at other caves in the United States to see how it ranked, and how did it rank?
Well, it turns out that Mammoth Cave in Kentucky is 420 miles, and it's the longest cave system in the world.
So there was a lot of cave systems that were bigger, including Mammoth, Jewel Cave, Wind Cave in South Dakota, and how do you pronounce that one?
in a cave in New Mexico by the name of Lichuguila.
Which is actually at Carlsbad National Park. It's just not, you can't visit it as visitors.
They may even be connected, they're not really sure.
There's two ways to get into the caverns themselves. You can either take an elevator. How many feet down?
750 feet down.
Or you can walk down the natural entrance, which is how long?
Approximately 1.25 miles, 2 kilometers. And this descent involves a series of switchbacks and can take around 1.5 to 2 hours to complete, depending, of course, upon your pace and how often you stop to watch the views.
Remember, if you do walk down into the cave, you still have to walk around the big room itself, and the trail down there is 1.25 miles long. So if you do decide to walk in, make sure that you can walk the other 1.25 miles, and you can always take the elevator out. Now, to visit, you do need date and time reservations as well as a pass to get in. So if you have a park pass, you can use that. If not, you'll have to pay for one when you get there. The reservations can be made at recreation.gov.
We still use our National Parks Lifetime Senior Pass, and it is an absolute bargain.
The hours are 8 to 5. The last cavern entrance ticket is at 2:15 p.m. And then the elevators run from 8:30 to 2:30 with the last elevator out at 4:45. What's the hiking situation?
If you hike into the cavern, it's 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. The last time to hike out is at 2:30 p.m.
There are restrooms at the bottom of the cave, but just once. The whole rest of the cave, the 1.25 miles, there's no more restrooms. So
no services at all. No water, no nothing.
Take care of that before you start walking. It's also really dark when you first get down there, and you have to let your eyes adjust. It took me a minute to be able to see anything at all.
Yeah, the National Park Service warns you that flash photography is not going to light up much.
Yeah, some of my imagery didn't come out the best, but we have some good shots too. Oh, it is a little bit chilly down there.
Yep, 56 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which is a nice respite from the above ground over 100 degrees. We were there in May and it was really hot.
Yeah, it's like walking into a really great air conditioner.
A lot of the big room area was accessible. We did see some people on scooters that got to certain points and they had to turn around because the corners were too sharp and it was a little steep in a couple of spots. But there's a lot of it that's accessible if somebody's in a wheelchair.
Yeah, most of the way the trail is quite wide, but in several places it narrowed down so distinctly that the scooters couldn't get past.
I was expecting that, you've seen one stalactite, you've seen them all, but the formations were really incredible.
Yeah, you have no control, of course, over how the water and minerals drip down. So what you see hanging from the ceiling are stalactites, and the stalagmites rise up from the ground.
In addition to those, you have columns and flowstone formations. And the other thing on the loop was there were these different areas, like there was that one area that was like the endless, bottomless pit. And it was, you looked over the side and it really did seem like it was an endless, bottomless pit. And it just went on and on. There was a couple of spots to sit initially.
Yeah.
Then there was some really long loops.
The sitting places got scarce for a ways. But I think the bottomless pit is like over 1,300 feet deep, if I'm not mistaken.
There are some tours that you can take, some guided tours. There's one in particular called the King's Palace Tour. It's 1.5 hours. It's ranger guided, and it goes through 4 highly decorated scenic chambers departing from the underground rest area. The tour descends to the deepest portion of the cavern with paved trails 830 feet beneath the desert surface. So when you take the elevator down, you're at 750 feet. So this goes further down into the caverns.
Yeah, the guided tours are available at the service center and the visitor center area.
Once you're done with the caverns, a cool thing to do is, if you can swing it, is to go back in the evening or plan your tour for later in the day to where it lines up with the bats exiting the caves. So this is the bat entrance here. You can go there every evening, and every evening at sunset, the bats fly out, and then they hunt all night, and they eat insects, and then they come back in the morning. And I know this is how bats operate because at our cabin we have bats, and we recently found out we have a lot of bats, and they do fly out every evening, and they do fly back every single morning.
The Bat Cave area of Carlsbad Caverns is a maternity roost for mainly Brazilian free-tailed bats, which roost here from early spring through October. The bats fly to Mexico and further south for the winter months.
Thousands of bats exit the cave, and it can take anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours for them to leave. And really interesting thing when I started reading about it is that each bat eats more than half of their body weight in insects in a single night. Now this is why we want to keep them at our cabin, so that they eat the bugs and the moths and the mosquitoes, so it makes our life more pleasant.
Bats are providing a service, folks.
And they're actually very mild and calm, despite all of the bad rap that they get.
And they do not bite humans.
So if you can, swing it, watch the bats leave at night. It's a very cool thing, and worthwhile. If you've gone all this way to see the caves, you may as well stick around.
This is part of the show.
See the bats. We talked about getting there earlier, and when we came to Carlsbad, we came from White Sands, and we came across the state there. It was
U.S. Highway 82.
And it was a few hours to get there, but the drive was really pleasant. It was really cool. The geography was more varied than I was expecting.
Much more varied, yeah. It was a fascinating route.
And you start going up into the hills as you cross over, and there was a few things that you're able to stop and see along the way.
One of which is the Tunnel Vista Observation Site, which is a really neat, it looks like a turnout actually, and it's over the top of a canyon and a small waterfall.
And it's just west of the tunnel itself, so if you're heading east, the lookout is first and then you go through the tunnel. The other place that we stopped was at the railroad trestle.
A little bit further east on US 82, but a really pretty area because by then you're in the mountains. It's very heavily forested, as you can see, and it's a very pretty area.
What do you know about the trestle bridge?
The wooden bridge was built for the railroad to bring people up into the mountains from the hot areas around that set of mountains, basically Alamogordo and El Paso.
It's actually listed as the National Register of Historic Places.
Sadly, the Cloudcroft Railroad ceased operating in 1947, and the rail line was abandoned. The railroad trestle was blocked off at both ends, and now it's just a spot on the highway to stop and take a look.
It's a good spot to stop and stretch your legs.
Yep.
We did a big, huge road trip in New Mexico, and we've got a couple of other videos for you to check out. It was New Mexico and Arizona. You should be seeing them now. Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much for watching, and enjoy.
See you next time. Cheers!